is we're gonna make a microwave chocolate cake. Microwave chocolate cake, and you need to be writing the recipe down, and you're gonna turn in the recipe into your folder that I have shared with you. So the very first thing we do anytime we're baking is we have to prepare the pan. And because we're using a microwave, we're going to be using this glass dish today. And normally in a regular cake, we're going to be greasing and flouring the pan to get that cake to release onto our plate. But we can't do that with microwaving because it happens so quickly. And if we put grease in there, then it's going to make the cake be all gushy and greasy and that sort of thing, and we don't want that. So we're going to do this very strange little microwaving trick. We are going to grease the pan that we're going to cook in, just like we would a regular cake. And then we're going to do a really interesting special technique. We are then going to take and put saran wrap inside of that pan. And what that's going to do, and if you guys need to stand up to see, please feel free to move around, just socially distance from each other, okay? Yeah, if you can't see the bowl, you should stand up and you can see.
I can't see the bowl though.
Okay.
Why do I name this in this folder?
Right now? Okay. So we're going to straighten out the saran wrap, and we're going to press that down into the pan. Get it nice and smooth, and then the cake batter is going to go inside of this area. And we'll get that all nice and prepared. We'll set it over to the side as we put together the other ingredients. So we've got our dish ready. So we greased a round microwave-proof dish, and it's 7 1/4 by 2 1/4 inches, or an 8 1/4 inch pan. And what it's talking about is the height here. This is the 1 1/4 by 8 round. Okay, in a small microwave bowl, and we're going to use this one, microwave safe bowl, we're going to put the cocoa and 1/3 of a cup of hot water into this. And what we're going to do is make kind of a chocolatey type paste. So we'll start with that. And so we're going to need our 1/4 cup measuring cup. And I've got that one. I always verify those just to make sure. 1/4 cup of the Hershey's cocoa. And I scoop that out, and I'm just going to level it across the top. Put that down in our little bowl. And then I'm going to do 1/3 of a cup of hot water. But what it tells us in the ingredients is that we heat up 2/3 of a cup, and we're only going to use 1/3 in this actual part of the recipe. So I'm going to go ahead and get some water, and it doesn't need to be boiling hot, it just needs to be warm water. So we're going to heat this up, and we're going to do 2 different things with it. So I'm putting it into the microwave, 30 seconds just to get it warm, and then I'm going to pour off one-third of it into this other glass measuring cup and reserve 1/3 of it in the measuring cup that I've heated it up in.
How long did you say it's in the microwave for?
Not long. We don't want it to boil, John Clifford. This is a super hot microwave, if you will, and I'm using the word hot, even though it's not a heating appliance. About 30 seconds, and it got it just warm to the touch. So I'm going to pour that off into here, and at eye level, you can see that it's 1/3 of a cup. And then I'm going to put the other, I'm just verifying it, we're at 1/3. I'm going to put that into our chocolate mixture, or cocoa, it's unsweetened cocoa. And we're just going to kind of give it a swirl and get that nice and hydrated. Now, what we're supposed to do to this is we're going to microwave it. The instructions say on high for 40 to 50 seconds. Now I can just tell you, if we do that the full 40 seconds, we're gonna overcook it. So I'm gonna put this again in for about 30 seconds. And what we're wanting it to do is to heat up and kind of thicken up just a little bit. Okay, so while it's doing that, I'm gonna take a medium bowl and I'm gonna combine flour, sugar, baking soda, baking powder, and salt into this bowl. Okay, the amount of flour, if you go up into your ingredient list, there we go. Let's see how this looks first before I start to measure. Now this mic could use just another second. No, this will be perfect. Can you see how it's hot and just chocolatey? Mitzi, can you see that? Okay, there we go. And we'll just set it over to the side because we're gonna need it just real shortly. All right, so back to the flour. The amount of flour that we're putting into our recipe is 3/4 of a cup plus 2 tablespoons. So you should be writing 3/4 of a cup plus 2 tablespoons. And this is a 1/4 cup. So I'm gonna do 3 of those. Whoop. We don't do that, do we? We never scoop the flour. So I'm gonna scoop it up and pour it in and then level it off. That's 1, 2, 3/4 of a cup plus 2 tablespoons. 1, 2. Okay, next thing that goes into our bowl is going to be our sugar. And we're going to need 1 cup of granulated sugar. This is a 1/2 cup, so I'm going to pour that. Okay, next level, that's a 1/2 cup. And it looks like I'm going to need some more, so I'll pour some more in there real quick. You don't have to show that part. Okay. And that's our second half. So that was 1 cup of granulated sugar. And then comes our leavening agent. Because we're doing this in the microwave, this thing is going to happen really, really super fast, but yet we need to also balance it out. So we're using both leavening agents. We're going to be looking at baking soda and baking powder. Okay? Baking soda is what made that volcano in middle school erupt. You had baking soda and the acid, you have vinegar. Okay? This has an inhibitor. It's the exact same stuff as baking soda, but it has an inhibitor cornstarch in it that slows the reaction. So we're going to use, of the baking soda, we're going to use a 1/2 teaspoon. Sorry, having trouble picking up stuff. Here we go. All right, a 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda and a 1/4 teaspoon of baking powder. Kind of slow the reaction. Okay. All right, then we need a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. It's a real quick, easy recipe. Okay, 1/4 teaspoon of salt. And now our liquids. All right, so we're gonna use, in this cup, it's calling for 1/4 of a cup plus 2 tablespoons of oil. So I'm gonna take my oil, I'm gonna go ahead and pour 1/4 cup. And at eye level, I see it's 1/4 cup. And then I'm gonna pour 2 tablespoons of oil into that same cup. I'm gonna try to not over pour it. That's 1, 2. This bottle's pretty big and hard to handle, like a much smaller bottle normally. Okay, then into this, I'm gonna go ahead and crack my egg. And that egg looks nice. Yeah, looks real good. So there's 1 egg. And then 2 teaspoons of vanilla. We need a lot of flavoring because it doesn't have a lot of time for the flavors to mesh. So you're gonna find that microwave recipes will have a tremendous amount of flavoring so that it has time to kind of get all that in. And what we're supposed to do is combine that with the remaining 1/3 a cup of oil, as well as our chocolate mixture. So I'm gonna take the whisk and get the baking soda, baking powder, sugar, salt, and flour kind of going. I'm gonna add my oil and my egg and let that get incorporated. And then I'm gonna add my water. And my chocolate mixture, and I'm going to use a rubber scraper so that we get all of that goodness from this one bowl. We move it over into this cake mixture bowl. Give it a nice spin. And so now you see we have this beautiful chocolate batter. And we just need to get it all good and incorporated. Once that's been incorporated, what we do next is we're going to put it into the pan that we prepared just a minute ago. I'm just going to kind of tidy up the workspace. And I'm going to move that pan back over. And then we're going to tuck this little batter right in. I'm going to go back to using a rubber scraper so we get all of that goodness. Into our mixture. And the cake is supposed to bake on high for 5 to 6 minutes. Now, you never want to do the most time in a recipe. You always want to do the lesser time because you can always add time, but it's very difficult to take time away. So we're gonna put this into our microwave for 5 minutes. When we take it out, it still should be moist up on the top because in a microwave, well, in every kind of cooking, every food item that comes out while it's hot has retained heat, and it transfers more heat and continues the cooking process after you remove the item from the oven. So you want to not take it out when it's dry, or it's just going to get drier. And we want our cakes and things like that to be moist and delicious, and yeah. So we don't want to overdo that. All right. So
is this in the microwave for?
Beg pardon?
How long is this in the microwave?
5 minutes. 5 minutes. Okay, so now while it's in there, let's go ahead and start our frosting. I'm gonna rinse this bowl out. 5 minutes. Okay, 5 minutes. And if you need some additional time, if your microwave is not quite as hot as this one, then you can add some, but don't do it just because there's moisture across the top. I'll show you in just a minute what you look for to know that it is cooked. Okay, so to do the frosting, I'm gonna start with a clean bowl. And to that, we're gonna put 3 tablespoons of butter or margarine. And on the outside of the butter, it has the numbers, 1 tablespoon, 2, 3. And then what we're gonna do is we're just gonna cut that, 1, 2, 3. And we're gonna put that down into our bowl. 3 tablespoons of butter. And then we are going to put 1/4 cup of the baking cocoa again. 1/4 cup. And then we will need of confectioner's sugar. We're gonna need 1 1/3 cup of confectioner's sugar. 1 1/3 cup of confectioner's sugar. So I'm gonna scoop out, I'm using the 1/3 cup measuring cup, so I'm gonna use 4 of these. Okay, so this is 1/3, 2/3, 3/3, which is 1 cup, and then we're gonna add 1 more third. So it's 1 1/3 cup of confectioner's sugar. We're gonna need 2 to 3 tablespoons of milk. And I have some milk in this little container, so I'm gonna put in 3 tablespoons. There's 1, 2, 3. And then we're gonna need our last thing is a 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla. A 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla flavoring. It's a 1/4. Mercy. Half a teaspoon. Here we go. 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla. There we go. And then we're going to give that a little spin with our mixer, our hand mixer. There we go, and that's popped in. And you want to start these things off slow, because if you start it really fast, then that powdered sugar is just going to go up in the air. So I'm going to turn it on low and hope for the best. And then once everything gets moistened and incorporated, then we can speed that up. This is going to make a really nice frosting. This is not going to be an icing. Our buzzer just buzzed on our cake, so it's ready for us to take a look-see. But this is not going to be one that you could use with a decorator tip or anything like that, but it spreads very nicely. So that's the difference between a frosting and an icing. So this is softer. There we go. That's all ready. And ready. And it's really nice and still a tiny bit moist across the top. If you notice on the top of it, and those of you who are in the classroom, come take a look, see at it. You're gonna have a little bit of moisture. Guys, please come. Mitzi. You're gonna see a little bit of moisture. This is where you wanna leave it. You do not want it to be dried out. You also want it to be pulling away from the edges. And let me show you how you can see that. When I hold it over to the side, see how it holds together, and yet it holds together, but yet it's pulling away. That's what you're looking for. Now you know you've got a cake in there, not just still a bunch of batter, okay? And we're gonna let it sit there, and it's gonna continue to cook. Now it's ready for us to frost. Whenever you've got a warm cake like this and you put frosting on it, yeah, that's not always a great combination. So I generally like for that to cool down some. See how fast it came out. I mean, we're not even 30 minutes into class. So what I would typically do is let it cool just a little bit longer. But I want you guys to see what that's going to look like. Okay, when you're removing a cake from a pan, instead of trying to flip the cake, it is easier to take the plate and turn it over on it to flip it. So, you guys looking? So I'm gonna set the cake plate on top of our cake, and then I'm just gonna flip it over. And it's gonna release. And because of our saran wrap, that'll just pull off real nice. And again, I should have let it cool, but for the sake of class, I'm moving a little bit faster than normal. So there's our cake, and it'll cool a little bit faster when it's out of the pan too. So, woohoo. All right. And then to ice it, where my rubber scraper go. I'll grab another one out of the drawer. Okay. I love rubber scrapers here. Goes to great. And I got this kind of close to the edge, but because it's hot and I don't want to tear the cake, I'm not going to move it. But if it were like cooled off, we could probably shift that over in just a little bit more. Okay. And when I'm icing a cake, what I typically do is I put the frosting on top completely and then pull it over to the edges. That just makes it a whole lot easier to do. The cake tastes better when it's nice and cool too, but in a class period, we don't have time to do all of that. There's our frosting. And then we're just gonna push it in one direction so that we're not pulling back and forth on the cake. See how it's already melted underneath it? If you stick it in the refrigerator for just a second, that would kind of help it too along the way. There's your really nice cake for dinner. It's not one for birthday, I don't think, but it's definitely one that you could enjoy for a quick dinner. And if you try this at home and do pictures of each of the steps of you making the microwave chocolate cake, you can get 10 bonus points added to your testing grades at the end of the semester. So, bon appetit, I hope you enjoy it. Bye.